Hello students, my name is Neha Bendre, Assistant Professor in Zoology at Raya Shikshan Sanstha's RBNB College, Srirampur. Students, in the previous lecture we have studied or we have got the introduction about the cell cycle. I have given you a glimpse of what is the different types of cell cycle and I have also told you about the relation of cell cycle with the Jivan Chakra, about the life cycle of a butterfly and of a human being. So you have got a bit idea about what is exactly the cell cycle. So today I am going to tell you about various phases of cycle, that to carry out the cell cycle, what are the phases that makes the cell divide, make the cell grow and develop into an individual. So here, before starting with the various phases of cell cycle, I want to share you a cell cycle or a daily routine cycle of yours. Okay, so what occurs in the daily routine? The daily routine is of 24 hours. Okay, because the day is of 24 hours. So what all things happen in this 24 hours? So let us know about the daily routine cycle. So in the daily routine cycle, of 24 hours, okay, 24 hours, what are all steps or what are the phases taking place? So most importantly, if this is the cycle, because we are discussing about the daily routine cycle which is of 24 hours, in that the hours that we are spending for work, or for example let us take of a college student, of a school student or any working person, the working efficiency takes place only in 5 to 7 hours. If there is a working person, he works for 5 to 7 hours. Okay, if it is a college student, he goes to college for at least 5 to 6 hours. Okay, if there is a school student, he goes to school for 5 to 7 hours. So let us for example take that working hours is for 5 to 7 hours. Okay, so what happens if that is the working hours? Then what about the different hours? What are the phases apart from this 5 to 7 hours? Okay, so for example, let us take this as a working hour. So I will call it as a W. In this 24 hours, we spend this for 5 to 7 hours. Okay, then what happens after we come home from our working sessions? Okay, after 5 to 7 hours we come home, and that after coming home, that is a resting phase. We start to relax our body. We start taking rest after a very active phase. I will call it as a active phase, where most of the time we are productive in this phase. Okay, so what about the other hours of the 24 hours? So in this, after coming from home, after work, school, college, we spend for example 1 to 2 hours in relaxing, where we can exercise. Okay, then we can have some tea. Okay, that is our resting period. Then in the next hour we have dinner. Okay, dinner. Then in the next span, I will take a big span where we spend or where we carry out our sleep, which should be for 7 to 8 hours, at least minimum 7 to 8 hours of sleep over here. And then again we begin after the sleep, we again begin the routine with the exercise, then breakfast, then lunch. Okay, and then again the process goes on. Okay, so this, for example, if this 5 to 7 hours is from 9 to 5 timing, we carry out this working hours. Then after 5, for example after 6 till morning 6, where we spend our 12 hours, from 6 to morning 12. Okay, we carry out all these activities from exercise, dinner, sleep, then next phases at whatever work we do after getting a nice sleep. Okay, then again we go for the working, or we go sessions, or for the office, colleges, school. So that again comes for the 5 to 7 hours. But to be productive at this working session, whatever we are doing, to be productive, to be active for this 5 to 7 hours, we spend a lot of hours, a lot of time for being active in this phase. So making our body ready, okay, to prepare our body for giving our active or a productive phase in this 5 to 7 hours, we spend this much time for preparing our body mentally, physically to work for this active phase. So this is called, as we are preparing our body, okay, metabolically active, functionally active, physically active, we spend this much hours, 12 hours, more than 12 hours for this 5 to 7 hours. So this is called as the preparatory phase. This is the preparatory phase. Active phase, or we can call as productive, we get productive or we get active in this hours, and this is the preparatory phase for giving our 100% in this active phase. In this phases, we are taking this first is called as rest phase. Rest phase, because after working for any person in the world, working efficiencies last for only 5 to 7 hours. After that our body starts to get tired, so we need a rest that time. Okay, so the phase then starts from the rest phase, that we come home, we take a tea, we take a bath, we take then dinner. Then most important phase is the S phase. I will call it as a sleep phase, where we have to take 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Okay, so this phase is important. In the preparatory phase, S phase is important. All the activity are depending upon this S phase, because if you have seen or if you have heard in the research also, the research says if you don't get a 7 to 8 hours of sleep, you will get over to different kind of diseases, because you are not getting a proper sleep, because most of the activities, metabolism occurs in that phase. Whatever the enzyme secretion for making our body active in the working phase takes place in the S phase. So if you don't get proper sleep in this phase, your body won't be able to cope up in this working phase. Okay, so here also we have a dinner, proper diet, where we are giving different kind of nutrients to our body, so that our body will work properly. Then we take an exercise to make our body physically fit to work for this active phase. So most of the time is given in this preparatory phase to make our body fit for this working phase. Okay, so this is a 24-hour cycle. It's a daily routine cycle where you spend most of the time in preparing your body for giving a 100% working phase. In the same case, we have our cell cycle, where in that cell cycle we also have a preparatory phase and an active phase. Okay, I will show you that. In this preparatory phase of cell cycle, the cell has to prepare, make it metabolically active to be active in the active phase. So let us see what are the different phases of the cell cycle. Here I have also shown you a picture of the cell cycle where we have different phases. But before that phases, see, for example, as we have to draw a cycle, we have to take it round. Here, in this phase, I have shown you, as in the previous daily routine cycle, there is a preparatory phase. So let us see that whole this, it's a preparatory phase. Of a cell cycle. and instead of working phase that was in a daily routine cycle, this is the dividing phase, which is the active phase, dividing phase, okay, which lasts for 1 hour, okay, and all this 23 hours, most of this period is taken into the preparatory phase. This all cells prepare themselves to get active in this M phase. So let us know about different phases that are taking place in this cycle. Okay, so here for example, here we have different phases. I have shown you here, so I would like to show it here. This is the G1 phase. This is the S phase, which is similar to our sleep phase, okay. Then we have a G2 phase. This is the G1, S phase and the G2 phase. So these are different phases of the cell cycle. So let us know the details about these different types of cell cycle. So as I have told you, the G1, S and G2 are the preparatory phase. So what this preparatory phase is called in the cell cycle. So let us see that the cell cycle, which is the events or the steps occurring in the cell for carrying out the growth and development of the cell. Okay, so it occurs in 2 phases. That is the interphase, which is called as the preparatory phase, as I have shown you here. Okay, so interphase, it's a preparatory phase. In this preparatory phase, where the cell spend most of its time in that phase to prepare the cell for the M phase. So in this, what are the actions taking place in the interphase? It is the growth of cell, okay, where cell grows. Then DNA replication. After growth of the cell, there is duplication of the chromosome, where DNA replication takes place. It is the longest period, as I have shown you here, that it is the longest period in the cell cycle, where the cell has to spend most of time to prepare the cell for the M phase. Then here the chromosome structures are long threads. They are not seen as we have seen in the metaphase as the X chromosome structure. Okay, it is not seen. It is seen as the long threads. Okay, then in this interphase there are 3 phases, as I have discussed here in this diagram, where what are the 3 phases? That is G1, S and G2 phase. The most important 3 phases that are taking place in interphase is G1, S and G2 phase. The details will be explained you later on. The next phase after the interphase is the M phase, which is called as the dividing phase. Dividing phase, where the cell to develop into an individual has to divide. That is the cell division. So this may, the cell division may takes place like through mitosis or meiosis. Okay, the mitosis and meiosis videos also will be explained you later. Okay, but just remember that this is the M phase, that is called as mitotic or meiotic, and so the word is M phase. So this is the dividing phase, where cell has to divide to develop into a fully grown mature cell. So in this phase it takes less than 10% of total time, as we have discussed in the working phase of our daily routine cycle, where only a less time span is in the working phase. Same in the case of this dividing phase, less than 10% of total time is taken in M phase. Then in this phase there are 2 stages called as karyokinesis and cytokinesis. Karyokinesis means there is division of nucleus or division of nuclei into two daughter cells. Okay, so it is called as karyokinesis. Karyo means nucleus, kinesis means division. And in the cytokinesis there is division of cytoplasm of a cell into two daughter cells. Okay, so in karyokinesis nucleus is divided into two daughter cells, while in cytokinesis cytoplasm of the cell is divided into two daughter cells. So this was about the two phases, most important two phases that is taking place in the cell cycle. Okay, so in the cell cycle, as we have known that this is the distribution, that this is the whole, that is the interphase, and this one is the M phase, and you have known about the three phases of the interphase. Okay, so now I would like to tell you about, now let us see, concentrate about the interphase phase, that what are all the steps, that why the cell spends most of the time in interphase phase. Okay, so interphase phase is divided into G1, S and G2 phase. So this G1 is called as growth phase. Growth phase, where cell grows in size. Okay, this is also called as the post mitotic period, because here you can see the G1 phase occurs after the mitosis phase, and so it is called as it is occurring after mitosis, and so it is called as post mitotic period. So in this post mitotic period, the cell, after dividing in the mitosis phase, the cell starts to grow, enlarge in size. Okay, in this, as we know that there are dividing cells after cell division, they are grown in size, but there are in the body there are non-dividing cells also. Which are those then? Non-dividing cells. For example, these are the brain cells, the neuronal cells, glial cells that are taking place in the nervous system. Also the muscle cells, adipocytes, myocytes. Okay, these are the non-dividing cells that after they are grown into a mature size, they further don't divide. Okay, it stays for the longer time till the adult. Then, so these non-dividing cells, like for example brain, muscle cells, okay, brain in neuronal cells. So what they do in the cell cycle, in the interphase, they stays permanently in the G1 phase, because as they are not going to synthesize or they are not going to divide further again, so permanently they are remain in the G1 phase. In this phase, the cells are most metabolically active, because whatever are the enzymes, they have to be activated because most energy is required in the M phase as the cell has to divide. Okay, so whatever are the enzymes or whatever activity has to be prepared in the G1 phase. Okay, so these are metabolically active phase. The production of various enzymes are taking place to make the cell metabolically active. Okay, and also different kind of enzymes are synthesized to carry out the next phase, that is the DNA replication. So to prepare, so this G1 phase, what it does, it prepares the cell for the next phase, that is the S phase. Okay, so to get ready for the S phase, there are different kind of production of enzymes. Then in this phase, RNA and different kind of proteins, for example histone proteins, which is required in the S phase, are synthesized in the G1 phase. Okay, and so this phase may last for 24 hours also. So this is the longest period of the G1 phase. Okay, so hope this G1 phase, which is the post mitotic period, is clear to you, that what all things occurs in the G1 phase. Now after preparing the cell or the G1 phase for S phase, okay, it starts replicating the chromosome. As we know, in the G1 phase, the chromosomes structure is thread-like. These are small, minute thread-like structure. Now, to take into the S phase for carrying out the DNA replication, it starts synthesizing histones. It starts using the enzymes that are prepared in the G1 phase. Now the cell is ready to replicate, to duplicate the DNA. Okay, so now the threads are duplicated into DNA. So this stage or this S phase, why it is called as S phase? Because it is the synthesis phase. Synthesis of DNA for replicating the DNA chromosome. Okay, this phase lasts for 6 to 8 hours. How much? 6 to 8 hours. Then in this, to make the DNA structured into a very compact structure, the different kind of histones are required to make that DNA structure compact and complex, so that most of the DNA size fits into the cell. So various kind of histones are synthesized. Then there is a formation of chromatid. Means chromatid formation means if this is the DNA, it has to get divided into two, and now the structure, that now the double structure, that the single structure is divided into two. So now this is the single chromatid and this one is the second chromatid. Okay, like this there is formation of chromatid from the chromosome structure. Okay, because single is the chromosome, when it has to divide it forms the chromatid. So there is chromatid formation in the S phase. Then next is the different kind of factor that is called as S phase promoting factor. Is the rate of that S phase promoting factor rises as it has to. S phase means synthesis phase promoting factor, where different kind of enzymes or different kind of proteins that is required for DNA replication has to be provided in this S phase. Now this S phase promoting factor promotes the DNA to replicate. Okay. After this synthesis phase, the cell, why the synthesis has been occurred? To divide, to get ready for dividing the cell in the M phase. Okay, so after synthesizing the DNA, replicating the DNA, there is a next phase called as G2 phase. So G2 phase is nothing but the gap phase. It is called as gap phase. The G1 is also called as gap phase. This is the first growth phase or first gap phase, and this is the second growth phase. So it is called, as it is a second growth phase, it is called as G2. Okay, as it is the second growth phase, it is called as G2, or you can call it as gap phase. Gap phase 1 and gap phase 2. In this G2 is called as pre-mitotic period. Why it is called as pre-mitotic period? Because it occurs before the mitotic phase. So as G1 was the post-mitotic period because it occurs after M phase, and G2 is occurring before the mitotic phase, so it is called as the pre-mitotic phase. In this G phase, after the division of the chromosome, the nucleus size starts to increase. So the volume of nucleus increases. Okay, so this phase lasts for 1 to 4 hours. This gap lasts for 1 to 4 hours, where it starts preparing for the M phase. Okay, so this is a very important phase. It checks whether the all DNA or chromosome strands has been replicated, has been duplicated for taking place, for carrying its activity into M phase. So this is the very important checkpoint. It is called as gap phase. Okay, where different kind of rRNA, mRNA and tRNA are synthesized. Okay, for its what we can call it, for to prepare for the M phase. Then here also it is going to be a metabolically active phase that is essential for cell division, as it is going to enter into M phase. It forms the mitotic spindle apparatus. As we know that in mitosis or meiosis, there is necessary formation of spindle. Okay, this is called as mitotic spindle, where it requires to attach, this mitotic spindle is required to attach to the chromosome and to pull out the chromosome into different corners so that the cell may divide and carry equal number of chromosome in each cell. So that formation of spindle takes place in the gap 2 phase, and so we are calling it that all the preparation, all the requirements are taking place in the gap 2 phase, as it is immediately going to enter into the M phase. Here, to carry out the M phase, there is production of cyclin M. These are nothing but the protein. Different kind of proteins are taking place at every phases, but in this gap 2 phase there is rise in the proteins of cyclin M, that is mitotic phase cyclin, which helps to enhance the rate of reaction in the mitotic phase. So now this is the phase interface phases are clear to you, which occurs in G1, S and G2. So after this interface phase, after each phases are carried out properly, that is G1, S and G2, now the cell gets ready to enter into the M phase. Okay, so this M phase is nothing but the dividing cell. So most important reaction, which only occurs for 45 minutes to 1 hour, that is in the M phase. So now as the cell has prepared to take entry into the M phase, now the mitotic phase starts dividing very fastly. Within 1 hour it finishes its work, and it again, after M phase, it dividing the cell, it again enters into the G1 phase, because after dividing, see, if this is a single cell, it divides into 2. Okay, then again it divides. In the meiotic phase it divides into 2, or in the mitotic phase again it divides into 2. So after this division, cell division, this divided cell are smaller in size. So to make the cell larger, it again enter into the preparatory phase, because the whole cycle has to repeat again. Okay, so this is, as there is sequential step, so it is called as the cell cycle. As this all the phases are coming again and again in the sequential process. Okay, so in the next lecture I am going to tell you about how each of the reaction is carried out so properly and so neatly. So there should be, then how the cell understands when to divide, how to divide, at what time to divide, and how much time I should spend in that phase. So there are different kind of some cyclins that suggest the cell that you have to proceed in the S phase, G2 phase or M phase. And if the cell is not ready to proceed into the next cycle, the cell has some checkpoints which tells the cell that you have to stop, you are not ready to enter into the next phase. So it is a very what we can say very proper managed programmed cell cycle. Okay, so it's a very interesting topic to study further. So in the next lecture I will be discussing about the checkpoints of the cell cycle. So for today this much is enough about the various phases of cell cycle. Hope you have understood. So thank you for watching.